already did the ads, so I'm just going to roll right into it. Okay.
Good. Yep.
Yeah, good is right. All right, Coach. Hinkle Fieldhouse, one of the most iconic. UConn is riding a 5-game win streak, and they play Butler on deck. You're locked on.
You are Locked On UConn, your daily podcast on the UConn Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On UConn your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Before we dive into today's show, just want to say thank you to all the fans who are growing this podcast. Its growth has been exponential since March. We're proud to say we're the only daily podcast covering both the UConn men's and women's basketball programs, the basketball capital of the world, and we're thrilled to bring you that coverage because you deserve it. So to show that gratitude, we're donating 10% of our revenue to Husky Ticket Project, helping send kids to UConn games, both the men's and women's, and probably some football and basketball and baseball. We're also making monthly donations to Bleeding Blue for Good, supporting NIL initiatives that make a difference for us. If you're enjoying the show, take a moment to subscribe, follow, leave a review wherever you listen. Thanks again for making Locked On UConn your first listen every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Well, we're thrilled to welcome to the program a basketball coach turned ESPN analyst, a two-time ACC Coach of the Year, one of the most insightful and respected voices in college basketball today. Let's get Seth Greenberg in the room here. Coach, I have to ask you a question right out of the gates. UConn's riding that 5-game win streak, and this coaching staff has been really impressive during that stretch. From your perspective, as a coach, what stands out about the job they've done to get this going in the right direction on the mainland in the upper 48?
Yeah, it's real simple. I mean, coming into the season, you knew it was going to be a process. I mean, you lost 4 guys to the NBA. Alex Caravan went from a complimentary player to the focal point. You had to take 4 new guys and try to figure out their roles, what they do well, what they don't do well, offensively and defensively. The expectation, obviously, is always to win and win at the highest level and win every game. But I think, even the greatest coaching staffs and the greatest teams, they go through some type of process. And it was a little bit of a painful process. Some people probably broke their ankles jumping off the bandwagon. Everyone was worried about Danny and how he reacted to certain things. But as a staff, they continued to focus. And, there were certain things that had to be cleaned up, to say the least. They're not a finished product. They're not even close to a finished product. But they've taken the steps and necessary steps to improve. And, sometimes you learn to lose before you can learn to win. And I think that's a little bit of what happened. I think it's also, you have to figure out, the best way to put your team in position to be their very best. And, Danny and Kamani and Luke and Tom are so good at that. And it's not just offensively, it's defensively. Your point of pickup, how you can defend ball screens, how you can defend off-ball screens, how much you're going to switch. Are you going to double the post? Rotations, who plays well with each other, who doesn't play well with each other, late game lineups. So there are so many things that go into it. You don't want to be 0-3 in Hawaii for sure, but those are 3 games, quite honestly, they had a chance to win. Certain things happened. They weren't at their very best, but sometimes you take a step back to go 2 steps forward, and they're starting to move forward, and they're starting to enjoy the process. The process can never be a burden. The expectation can never be a burden. It's got to be embraced, but it's also be recognized that, as I've said many times, you don't win a 3rd national championship in November and December. You win it along the journey. And during that journey, there's going to be roadblocks and detours, and it's how you handle those roadblocks and detours that determine your long-term success. And so far, they've handled it really well.
For sure. You mentioned some great points there. You mentioned Danny and the coaching staff, coming back, and how people might probably jumped off the bandwagon. I liked your quote about breaking their ankles, jumping off the bandwagon. Dan did say, though, he said in interviews that maybe if someone grabbed him and kind of to check his ego about some. I had no issue with how he acted, by the way. We've talked about that a ton on the show. But do you think it was more about just giving him some perspective around the stuff that you talked about? This not a finished product, the team being young, and realizing that the leaders aren't the same as they are in the last 2 years. Do you think that's part of someone grabbing him and being like, hey, we're going to figure this out, but you need to relax?
Yeah, I think that he needs to take a step back, look in the mirror, and understand, look, he's a savant coach, and his job is to help his players. And to me, that he took a step back, and instead of enjoying the process became a burden in a lot of
Right.
ways. And he's self-reflected. Look, he's always going to be tough on the officials and he's always going to fight for his team. And that's just the way it is now. Sometimes you got to know how far you can go. I think that his courtside demeanor has been absolutely great. I thought what he did to Garden was great. I think that the other night in a very tough situation, he was terrific. Look, all coaches, you're going to pick your spots with the officials. Also, depending on the officials you have, you know how far you can go. But you can't let that get to the point where you lose focus of your team. And I think that's the biggest thing. Those players love him, and
Yep.
they play for him, and they believe in him. And sometimes, maybe they mirror his reactions some. And he's a tone setter in every which way. And then this is a different group, so he's got some of these guys have to understand his intensity and his expectation. You got all these guys coming from other programs that were all good programs, but they weren't UConn. They weren't the way they do things. I joked with Dan when I used to go watch them practice in the summer. I said, like, for Tarris Reed and Aiden and those new guys, they thought the summer workouts were just a workout. They didn't understand summer workouts were a challenge every single possession. So, it's a learning experience for all of them. And, part of it is I think Dan's empowering some guys, which is a good thing, but holding them accountable. Like you can do both. You can challenge, push, challenge, push, challenge, push. And then, like he's been, really challenged Tarris Reed. But then in the post-game press conference the other day, what did he do? He's talked about, hey, how good he is, what he's done, how much better he's gotten, his ability to finish. So I'd go watch practice in the summer, and he's dribbling and spinning and doing all these things. Catch it, close, and score. I mean, it's
Right.
plain and simple. So the coaching staff is great. They're great people. They care so much. They're totally invested. If you're not totally invested, it's a hard place to be around because that's the expectation, and it's just the way it is. So it's not fixed, but it's a lot better than it was. They still got to improve their perimeter defense, but they're making strides.
You mentioned Tarris. It's almost like I sent you some show notes because Tarris Reed has been a monster. He was a top 30 recruit. When he transferred, it was 8 months ago. I did a show, and I used the word a perfect fit for them because of how they could mold him. Watch some of his high school tape. He's just a dynamic athlete, and he's huge. 20 points, 13 rebounds last night, 4 blocks, 3 steals in the win against Xavier in overtime. Played 35 minutes, only 3 fouls. What do you think it's been the difference? Do you think it's this? What Dan said initially was, I think he should start listening to the coaches that won 2 straight national championships. He's probably taking that to heart, wouldn't you say?
He's learning how to play hard all the time. He's learning how to sight things in their offense. He's learning how to get to his spot, catch, look the ball in his hands. I missed that one bunny towards the end of the game, but he's learning how to play winning basketball. I said he and Sampson could be the two-headed monster. Another set of two, but different.
Mm-hmm.
And he is different. He does have a good feel for rebounding the ball. At the end of the Gonzaga game, there were some balls that he needed to pursue a little harder, but he was exhausted. He has not used to playing that many more minutes. But he can rebound the ball. He can close off and finish around the basket. He's got pretty good hands defensively. He can rim protect. He's got to clean up a little bit his ball screen defense some, but he's going to continue to get better because of how they coach him every day and what they expect of him. And they're not going to let him, you are your habits. And if,
Right.
And when you're at UConn, you're held to the standards. So he's going to continue to get better. And I think he's Dan's an acquired taste, and he was coached very differently a year ago. And I think it's taken him time to understand how much Coach cares and the way he shows how much he cares.
For sure. All right, when we return, we're going to talk about the upcoming matchup with Butler on deck at Hinkle Fieldhouse coming up after this. Have you ever looked at your bank statement and found charges for subscriptions you forgot or didn't even realize you had? I know I have. And that's where Rocket Money came to the rescue. It's like having your own personal finance assistant. Rocket Money found these sneaky subscriptions and canceled them for me in just a few taps. Rocket Money isn't just about canceling subscriptions. It's a personal finance app that helps you take control of your money. Whether it's finding and canceling unwanted subscriptions, monitoring your spending, or even lowering your bills, Rocket Money brings everything together in one great place. With over 5 million users and 500 million saved in canceled subscriptions, Rocket Money members save up to $740 a year using the app's premium features. For me, the subscription tracker has been a game changer. I've canceled a few services I wasn't even using anymore, and I've saved so much money, and I've used their goals feature app. It's helped me automatically set aside money for the future without stressing things like vacation, stuff like that. Take control of your finances with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Don't let those unwanted subscriptions drain your wallet. Start saving money today. Venues in college basketball. Tell us about the atmosphere as a coach. What can UConn fans, I know there's plenty that are going, can expect with just an iconic place playing Butler, another Big East game? I'm curious because I've never been there. Hinkle Fieldhouse, one of the most iconic venues in college basketball. Tell us about the atmosphere as a coach. What can UConn fans, I know there's plenty that are going, can expect with just an iconic place playing Butler, another Big East game? I'm curious because I've never been there. From your perspective, what's Hinkle like?
Well, it's Hoosiers. That's what it is. Yeah. It's Hoosiers. I mean, now look, they've renovated. Barry Collier, the former AD, who also was the start of the Butler Way, they put a ton of money into that building, but it reeks of tradition from walking in on the outskirts of this brick building to when you walk in, and you obviously know so many iconic moments from those back-to-back Final Four teams to Hoosiers to every state championship. There's so many amazing memories that building, the walls of that building could talk. There's some great history in that building. So it's a great old building that's been renovated, and they built, they upgraded their practice facility, which was just a back gym, but it reeks with tradition. And it's they got really good fans, and they've lost like 4 or 5 in a row, but they're playing really good basketball. I mean, they're a really efficient offensive team, and top 15 offensive efficiency. They shoot the hell out of the three. They're a very good passing team, not as much off the bounce as maybe Xavier, but more out of their offense, out of their spacing, out of creating stuff out of their offense. Thad Matta is a terrific offensive coach. You're going to have to defend a three for sure. And they've got enough size with screen, and Telford's a tough matchup up front, and Pierre Brooks is shooting the ball really well. And to me, that the Kobe King kid from Tulane is another knockdown shooter. They got 3 or 4 guys that are going to shoot 40 from the three. Patrick McCaffrey's got size, experience, versatility. So it's a game that will test your defensive principles. It's a game that you're going to have to understand how to pressure the basketball, not overhelp. It's a game where you're going to have to communicate, your switches in terms of whether it's off the ball or on the ball. It's a game that you're going to try to have to turn them over some and disrupt their rhythm. And then defensively, they do have some rim protection. They do have some experience. They all do have some physicality to them, although they have not been as good defensively.
Fair enough. Yeah, you mentioned their three-point shooting, giving everyone some context. They have 3 shooters that are all over 44%. You have Colby King is shooting at 44%. McCaffrey's at 47%, and it's not like he's only shooting on 70 attempts. So they're pretty lights out. Telford's at 43%. Casio Augusto off the bench, he averages about 15 minutes a game, is shooting 43%. So yes, the three-point barrage may not stop against UConn like it has in the last few games. Brings me to my next question. Had a good conversation yesterday with some folks, and then even in the live show about UConn's perimeter defense and defensive principles in general. Dan had a great comment in his post game that it made me think differently about it. That if you look at the stats of the Xavier game, they had 29 made field goals on only 9 assists. So their ability to create shots, to hit his quote, almost NBA level. Is it a little overblown about the 3-point defense when a team is just lights out like that, like they were in that Xavier game?
Well, Xavier was different. Yeah, I mean, look, they only have 9 assists. What are they doing? They're creating shots on their own, and they're making tough shots. That game was like a video game. I mean,
Yeah.
it really was. And I've never played a video basketball game, but I guess that's what it would look like. Because I mean, both teams were executing at a high level. Both teams were making shots. I mean, tough contested shots. So, like, I'm sure they broke the film down and said, all right, how many of those were contested? How many of those were defensive mistakes? How many did we close out short? We should have closed out long. How many of those is because we didn't pressure the pass hard enough? So therefore, he could find a guy just at the right time coming off an action. I mean, so there's so many ways to look at it. Look, Xavier went small, created some matchup problems, forced people to defend out on the floor, and that's what happens. But in Maui, they didn't defend the ball.
Yeah.
And so those are two different things. In this game, they can't melt on screens. They got to have enough pressure on the basketball to disrupt the timing of people coming off screens. The guy that's guarding the screener's got to be active to try to extend the screen. The guy that's being screened has got to be hard to screen, or if you're going to switch, you got to switch up. So it is, every game is different. But as a whole, Hassan can guard the ball when they go deeper into their lineups and they play certain lineups. So if you have two guys that can't guard the ball at the same time, and they have a couple of guys that aren't really great at defending the ball. So although Liam's gotten a little bit better, that breaks down your defense. You can hide one; it's hard to hide two. It's just that easy. So, as a coach, if you're playing against a team that has two guys that struggle guarding the ball, and you put those two guys on different sides of the floor, your team is basically always in rotation.
Yeah. No,
and if your team's in rotation, it impacts rebounding, it impacts contesting shots, it impacts getting people in foul trouble, it impacts a lot of different things.
Totally fair. Well, you answered my question for me, and I think you're spot on. Who should we watch?
Mark, you'll find out I usually am.
Yeah, I agree with you. Listen, you're one of the few analysts that I don't think I've ever tweeted at you be like, Seth, you have no idea what you're talking about. So
I'm sure that would have a great impact on me. I would lose a lot of sleep on that if you did that. It would be the simplest thing I would do is I would just block you, so it makes no difference.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. But it's like the Pat McAfee question. Have you ever made fun of a kicker? To everyone he talks to on game day. So I think we all disagree at times, but you're spot on. This Butler team, you said they've lost 4 straight. They're hard to quantify a team that's shooting the ball this well. Is it the defensive side? Do you think UConn can take advantage of that with Tarris? Because I'm not sure Sampson's back. He may be. I'm not sure. We'll find out later this afternoon on his injury update. Do you think they're going to utilize Tarris the way they did in the Xavier game, kind of playing a little more inside out against Butler?
Well, I mean, Tarris got those balls. I mean, they weren't just post ups; they were curls and forcing defense to rotate and then drop offs. I mean, the biggest play of the game was Liam coming off the dribble handoff and getting in the lane, forcing a help defender and dumping it off. So, Screen's a good defender, and he's a big body and he can block shots. So I think that you take what the defense gives you. Do they have post-up opportunities for Tarris? Yeah, but he gets a lot of his stuff off penetration. He gets a lot of his stuff off, dribble drive, kick out, take it down, feed it. He gets a lot of his stuff on ball screen, drag 2, throw back, quick shape up. So, they're going to have balance. I mean, that's what Danny's teams have balance. That's just the way it is. So, this is a game. Yeah, they're not a great defensive team. There's no doubt about it. Butler's just average defensively, and I think they also got to turn them over a little bit. Get into their guards a little bit. Playing on the road at Butler, last year it was a really close game.
Yeah,
if I remember watching that game. So you got to disrupt the rhythm. They're assisted on 61% of their field goals. So I mean, the most important thing is to disrupt that, because a lot of their actions come off of quick ball reversals and they're a very good screening team. So offensively, I mean, they'll run yeah, Dan and the offense still run a bunch of actions. They're going to get good shots. I haven't seen too many times where they haven't found a way to get good shots. Defensively, they got to find a way to disrupt.
Fair enough. When we return, we're going to talk about a little bit of Seth's understanding of around college basketball. Who are his top teams in each conference? And I want to get a coaching insights from Seth Greenberg after this. You know what time of year it is, guys. It is college football playoff time. Are you as excited as I am? Because it's that time of year. The college football playoff is back. With the newly expanded 12-team format, it's guaranteed to be bigger and better than ever, bringing you all the hard-hitting and high-flying excitement that you love. TNT Sports coverage of the college football playoff begins December 21st. That's tomorrow, starting with the college football playoff kickoff. It's a show presented by AT&T at 11 a.m. Eastern. Leading into the first matchup, the SMU Mustangs of the ACC battling the Penn State Nittany Lions of the Big Ten at noon. Then the Clemson Tigers, ACC champions, look to upset the SEC, newly formed SEC Texas Longhorns in a showdown at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. Don't miss a moment of the action. Watch the college football playoff presented by Allstate live on TNT, True TV, TBS, and Max. Your old pals at HomeField, as I'm rocking my sweatshirt, calling all the UConn fans. Are you ready to rep these Huskies? Dan Hurley was literally wearing this sweatshirt in a press conference. Look no further than HomeField Apparel, the best in premium collegiate apparel for diehard fans and Hall of Fame coaches. HomeField doesn't just make T-shirts and hoodies. They craft stories with their designs, diving deep into the history and traditions of each school to create a truly unique and nostalgic gear. It also feels great, too. And the best part, we got an incredible selection for us UConn fans, right? Whether you're cheering from the courtside at Campbell Pavilion or watching the game from your couch like I do, HomeField's comfortable and stylish gear will keep you looking and feeling great. I'm rocking their vintage designs all the time. And let me tell you, the compliments just keep coming. People ask me where I got a DM the other day. Hey, where'd you get that white Huskies logo? So I sent the guy the link, and I'm sure he's buying it. So the quality is unmatched. Like we talked about, I've literally worn these head to toe when my wife was giving birth to make sure I was as comfortable as I possibly could to be in a very stressful environment. And an exclusive offer for our Husky fans, Locked On UConn listeners, use the code UConn24 at checkout to get 15% off your first order. 15% off. That's huge. Don't wait. Head to homefieldapparel.com. Find your new favorite piece of Huskies gear and use the promo code UConn24 to save 15%. And if you have someone that, like my wife, that's a Tennessee fan, you can still use UConn24 and get her 15% off if you have someone that likes the other gear that's on the site. HomeField Apparel. Wear one for the team. We're happy to have him from ESPN. Two last questions for you, Coach. You've had a front row seat to the ever-changing landscape of college basketball. What's one thing that you would have liked to have had when you were coaching about today's game? Is there anything, or would you not change a thing?
I mean, look, it's just it's a totally different environment right now.
Yep.
With the portal and with like, I can tell you one thing: my teams at Long Beach State that had Lucius Harris and Brian Russell, two 12-year pros, I wouldn't have had them for 4 years.
Right.
There's no way they would have been over, and they would have been playing at UCLA or USC. We beat USC, we beat Memphis, we beat Kansas, and we had really good players. So it's a totally different environment with the portal and NIL. You saw the kid Engelstaff the other day go for 40 against Alabama. You don't think he's been recruited right now, right off of that campus at North Dakota? So I surely wouldn't miss the whole idea of pay for play, because it's not NIL, it's pay for play.
Right.
But I don't think I would change how I coached. I would coach my team really, really hard and tell those guys, basically, if I was at a mid-major or something like that, I'd treat it like a junior college. Say, you know what, for 2 years, I'm going to coach my ass off, and you're going to play hard, and you're going to get better, and then you're going to come at the end of those 2 years, you're going to tell me where you want to go to school, where you want to go next. And I'll pick up the phone, and I'll help you get there. Kind of similar what's happened with Chaz Lanier at Tennessee for Matt Driscoll. If you're at a high major, obviously retention of players is really important, but you've also got to understand you're only as good as your locker room. So you've got to find a way to do that. What I would do is, which I did with my teams, but it would be different. I'd make them sign a contract at the beginning of the year. For the next 6 months, we're all in this thing together. At the end of that time, you might not like me. I might not like you. We can move on. People don't understand this time of the year is the most difficult time of the year for a college basketball player because obviously students are gone. You just finished finals. You have the game before you probably get a little bit of a break and go home for 2 days and celebrate the finals. Those guys go home right now. First of all, the game is really hard, making sure you guys are focused. But then they go home for 2 days, and you know what? Workout guy, grassroots coach, agent, parents, girlfriend, prep school coach, whatever. They got so much static around him. Oh man, you need to be playing more. He's not using you right. Why is he playing this guy ahead of you? All right, so those players get filled with all kinds of crap for 2 days. Now you got to bring them back on campus, and 3 days later you probably have a game,
Right.
and you've got to get them back to being the best version of a team and buying into roles and playing winning basketball and championing roles. So I think that's a part of the next week or so that a lot of people don't understand. You're only as good as your locker room because when those guys come back, they got to all be on the same page because when they come back, it gets real. Every single game is not a game; it's an event. Every single game is a league game, and I don't care who you're playing. All right, that other team knows what to give and what to take away. They're prepared. They got 13 guys on scholarship. They practice, and you have to play really well to have a chance to win. So, uh, what would I change? I mean, coaching's coaching. I wouldn't change the way I coached. You would just have to change, the way you go about things. And I would probably use some analytics in my if I went into the portal.
Yep.
But I would make sure that I had guys that understood that once they step on campus, all that other crap is done. It's time to go to work.
Fair enough. Last question, then we'll get you out of here. You've won 2 ACC Coaches of the Year. If you ever had to give an acceptance speech, I love this question. You win the award again, but you can only use 5 words in your acceptance speech. What would they be?
Thank you for all the people that helped.
Seth, you're a gem. I really appreciate you. Sorry about being late on this or having technical difficulties, but you are welcome anytime. If you're on ESPN, tell Kevin Connors I say hello. And that's been Locked On UConn. Seth Greenberg, go Huskies.